Welcome in to episode 278 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network, presented by Justice Dental. Today's show is a fun one, as always, featuring a brand new special guest. Well, he's a friend of the show, but a special guest for this kind of recruiting cycle. We always love him. He's the best in the business, recruiting insider Travis Branham of 247 Sports. But before we get started with that, a quick message from our friends at Justice Dental. Sources Say is presented by the great team at Justice Dental. Visit one of their two Lexington locations by scheduling an appointment online at justicedental.com or by calling or texting 859-543-0700. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Justice, and their team strive to provide you the best service in the world as always. Travis, appreciate you coming on, brother.
Of course, brother. I'm very impressed with that commercial you just did. I don't have those skills, so I'm taking.
We got like four. We have friends in high and low. We're just getting started here. A very busy time of year. We appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. The recruiting period has begun. Coaches are going all over the place. I'm sure you'll be breaking news as this show's going on. That's why you are the best in the business of what you do. But we have some housekeeping things to take care of beforehand. Everybody wants to know, Big Z, what's the latest with him? We've kind of reached a stalemate with this. It's things have gotten eerily quiet, and I don't think that's a good thing. What do you know about the situation, Travis Branham?
To be honest, at this point, I'm not banking on him being on this roster next year. I think it's a very long shot bet. As you've very well covered at this point, there's been a lot going on behind the scenes. I do think there's probably more behind the scenes than we all know. And so it's not a clean, cut and dry reason, or it's not as clean and cut and dry as to why he's not coming. Again, maybe they connect on a Hail Mary and he does end up at Kentucky, but at this point, won't disclose all the details of it, but at this point I'd be shocked if he actually ends up here.
Yeah, it's been frustrating because the path did seem so clear, and then as the details started to emerge and the waters became quite muddied, it felt like every day that passed, we kind of hit a point where it was it needs to either happen like right now or he's not going to. So what would be the next step if this doesn't unfold the way Kentucky fans are hoping? What would be the next step for Big Z? Would he go elsewhere in college basketball? Would he just stick in, stay overseas and go to the draft next season? What would be the step two of this?
Yeah, I think he'll try to go to college. I genuinely do believe that. Now, will he actually be able to, again, get through the admissions process and actually get admitted somewhere? To me, that's going to be the biggest question. The one team I think you have brought him up at this point. DePaul is the team being rumored the most behind the scenes at trying to get him on their campus if this does indeed fall through. But again, I think he will try, just as we're seeing, and it's obviously becoming overwhelmingly evident. These international kids now want to come play in the United States due to NIL. So to me, he's going to give it a shot, but there's still so much more to play out. If it doesn't happen here, there's still going to be a long road ahead for him to get enrolled in somewhere else.
That's what I was going to say. What type of hurdles would he have to clear with it being 3-4 weeks into a semester now? I mean, you're talking it's September. I mean, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, DePaul is a private school, so I went to Kentucky, so I'm a lot more familiar with the Kentucky admissions process. So I would imagine maybe it's even harder at a school like DePaul. But yeah, you're still going to have to jump through hurdles in terms of getting out of Croatia, getting out of the team he has been with, and then also the admissions process. So you got a 2-point hurdle there to kind of get enrolled, whether it's DePaul or anywhere else in the country.
And you mentioned the international prospects wanting to come here and have to play college basketball for NIL, but does a situation like this damage Kentucky in that pool of recruiting? Is that something that can be used negatively? You think against Kentucky that they couldn't get a kid of this caliber in?
In my opinion, I don't think it damages them in any regard. Now, will people probably try to use it against them? Of course they will. But to be honest, I think at that point they're just kind of making stuff up, trying to just, again, Kentucky always has an upper hand, so you're always going to be trying to kind of weasel a way around to wedge your way in between a player and Kentucky. So, no, I don't think it dangers them. Obviously, it hurts from a a PR perspective, a lot of fans are going to be really upset that he won't be coming. Obviously, they're going to be upset with the admissions office, as we've seen, and we saw them release a statement about last week. But to be honest, no, it would just be an unfortunate thing. And the way they kind of piece this roster together, especially with the addition of Trey Mitchell late in the season, and hopefully Aaron Bradshaw comes back healthy, to me, at the end of the day, it's a loss, but not as big of a loss. You have all the pieces there to try to fill that void that he'd be leaving.
And the frustrating part on Ivisic's side is, and part of the reason why we're even here, the easy solution would be just retake the test, kid. Like, if you don't have the qualifications as of today, why not just retake it? The issue is other schools behind the scenes are saying, well, don't retake it. We can get you in tomorrow. How accurate is that? How much of that is a recruiting tool that they're using to try to get a high potential guy who could be a high level draft pick next season? It's recruiting. It's politics. So that's the frustrating part of this, where I think Ivisic just kind of just hit his own wall with this, where it's like, well, I've done this twice. I've tried 2 different paths. I personally think that I've done enough to get into the University of Kentucky, which has a 95% admissions rate. Me personally, I got 25 on my ACT. I'm not a whiz kid. I did just fine. I know you were smarter than me.
Brother. My GPA was atrocious in high school. My ACT was actually lower than that. So no.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm not as intelligent as you actually think I am.
But
I'm a fraud.
That's the frustrating part. Is why are they choosing this specific situation to dig their heels in and say we're not doing this, but. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to get that clarity. I think it's going to be a statement released one way or the other. As you said, hopefully a Hail Mary is thrown, and we luck into this at the last hour. But as we said last week, as the days creep on, we're kind of hitting a point where it's the point of no return. So it's frustrating. You said kind of what next steps would be for Kentucky from a Trey Mitchell side, from hopefully Aaron Bradshaw gets back on the court as soon as possible. Where does Santos Zero fit into this? Is that something that Kentucky could reevaluate as a January addition? They met with him today, and we'll talk about John Calipari is hitting the recruiting trail hard. He's in Atlanta today. Went to see overtime elite Carter Knox and Santos Zero. Is that something that John Calipari would like to readdress?
I mean, potentially, but I think he's pretty set for the most part on staying in 2024, or else he would have done this back in the summer when this was a really hot topic, and he really just set, I'm going to stay in the 2024 class. Now, of course, they can revisit and make a strong push and say, hey, we really need you this year. But to be honest, based on what I saw out of Samto this year, I think he needs another year in high school. He's got a long way to go. He's obviously physically, he's ready. And he could come into practice and put these guys through some serious work. But from a skill perspective, a feel for the game perspective, he's still got a long way to go. He absolutely needs a full year. Now, I guess, again, if you really need another body, which admittedly, I don't know if they need another body at this point, unless Aaron is really going to be out for a very long time, which, again, gauging that situation has not been easy. A lot of bad information, or I shouldn't say bad information, just conflicting information going around right now, and throughout the whole time, going back to even May when this stuff started kind of coming out and leaking. So, yeah, they could revisit it, but to be honest, if they were to bring him in, I wouldn't envision him being a massive impact other than just adding depth to your depth chart and just having another body in practice.
Yeah, and two, the thing to me that can be looked at positively, like if he doesn't make it to Kentucky, then you at least got to see what this team looks like in Toronto with Trey Mitchell at the 5. How much confidence should that give Kentucky fans that they've seen these guys in action, minus Ugo and Bradshaw?
Yeah.
They saw them play well together.
How can I forget Ugo? I'm sitting here talking about the bigs and I forget about Ugo.
He's kind of a mystery too, though, right?
He is a mystery. I mean, to be honest, what I saw with them on that trip to Canada, I was actually really impressed with how they looked. And what honestly really impressed me was how Cal was playing with this team. It was a lot more spaced out, a lot more shots on the perimeter, a lot more free-flowing than what we saw last year in the seasons prior. So to me, seeing Trey in that style of system coming here, I was a little concerned. If they're going to stick with it the way they've played, historically, Cal hasn't had a lot of skilled big men that can dribble, pass, shoot, step out onto the perimeter. But Trey, with the way they played in Canada, he fits. And obviously, the biggest thing he's going to provide for this team is just the experience value. It's an extremely young team. It's going to be, for the most part, led by the freshmen with DJ Wagner, if Aaron Bradshaw ends up coming back, Rob Dillingham, obviously, Justin Edwards especially. Antonio Reeves and Trey Mitchell are going to have a lot of influence on those guys, and so that experience with how they kind of operate in that team chemistry is going to be extremely valuable and an extremely important thing to monitor.
And one more thing on Trey. When transfers come here, sometimes they have to take a step back. Reed Travis, others that have been in this program. Maybe with him, is it a situation where maybe he does more, shows more to his game? Did you see something from him in Toronto that maybe you didn't see at other stops in college basketball?
I personally think he'll have to take a step up. This team is going to need, again, that experience that he has on the court, especially with the aging process that we've seen across the entire college basketball landscape with this transfer portal and everybody having these COVID years. You have to have that on the floor. And so also not only him, but Antonio Reeves, knowing how Cal coaches, the way he wants to defend, the terminology that he uses, all that stuff is going to be super important. So Trey, I think, will have to take a step up and really be a leader out on the court for those guys, especially when adversity comes, when SEC play rolls around. Those bi-weekly games can get extremely difficult, and you can really see some kids, especially I'll always reiterate, freshmen, struggling with their confidence, and that's where you have to have a guy like Trey Mitchell, who's been there, done that, to step in, kind of show them the way, but also fill those voids where others are slacking. He'll have to step up, and his skill set kind of plays into that, and is going to be, I think, very valuable for Kentucky.
So we spent a lot of time, both privately and on this show. We had you on last year talking about the 2023 class, how as a collective group it was underwhelming. We had our concerns about this upcoming team, but seeing them in Toronto and the fit alongside one another and the chemistry that they've developed kind of, I think, beat some of those early adversities and maybe get them a bigger head start than we were maybe anticipating. 2024 class, completely different story from a talent perspective. We've been outspoken about it being a weaker class overall. Some recent additions from a reclass perspective that have helped, but still overall not the best class in the world. If you're John Calipari, how do you navigate those waters? How do you go about, going after Carter Knox, going after Jaden Quains, going after different guys while also knowing that, you might have to hit on a reclass. You might have to go add an international big. What do you do if you're John Calipari with this?
That's the question. And honestly, I don't know, because it, like you said, it's a very weak class, and you don't want to go after and take 5 players in a class of like 2024, which many of them aren't equipped to make a day one impact at a program like Kentucky, to be honest with you. And that goes for many of the players in the top 15 even. It's just an extremely weak class, so you got to be extremely calculated in how you're going to go about this. To me, you're going to have to – I would prioritize the transfer portal and go ahead and gauge my roster for this season. Who am I going to lose? Okay, I'm going to need you're going to lose a Justin Edwards. So next year, probably want a really good wing. And honestly, in this 2024 class, based on who they're targeting, you're just going to probably let them slide off, and you're going to wait for that. Now, Jaden Quaintance type of situation, that could be one. He's going to be here for 2 years regardless, unless he opts to do a hybrid thing where he goes to college for a year and then goes pro for a second year. That would, to me, would be worth it. The guards in the class, it's extremely weak guard class. And so, to me, you're going to be losing DJ Wagner, probably lose a Rob Dillingham, likely going to lose Antonio Reeves. This may even be his last year of eligibility, so he's definitely gone. So to me, maybe you take just one guard. So to me, I would probably play this as a small high school class. I'm going to take maybe 2-3 guys, and then I'm going to wait for that transfer portal because I know that's where the most bang for my buck is going to be coming from. And then, like you said, an international class, Kentucky, with what they've done with Ivisic, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his first name. They're showing that, hey, we're more open-minded to this transfer or to the international route than we have previously been. So let's see what else is out there and see if we can find something more and bigger than what we have seen year after year in this 24 class. Because we've evaluated these guys for a very long time, and you always wait for the guys to kind of bloom late, and that's where And we've seen that happen with a couple guys like a Jalil Bethea, a VJ Edgecombe. But at this point, those kids are so deep in their recruitments, I don't think you're really getting involved there. So it's kind of, the talent is kind of dried up, whereas in 2023 or 2022, you would see other guys rise to the top and you'd be like, okay, we can really get in there like a Nick Smith happened. That's just not happening in 24. So to me, keep it small in the high school class. Let's kind of cast our net in the transfer portal more, and then also in the international market.
As far as recruiting model to follow, at one point it was one and done at this program. Do you think now it's with the portal and high school recruiting and everything that it's more of a flexible thing that Kentucky and some of these programs need to approach it as a year-to-year basis, like kind of blend what you need to do?
I think that's the only strategy you can go with at this point. You have to treat it as like you're the GM of an NBA team at this point, and we're seeing those GM jobs pop up everywhere. And so you have to get good early evaluations of these high school players. Maybe not so much as their sophomores like we're seeing with this 26 class. That's not so much a priority. But while they're juniors, you need to have a great kind of judge and feel for what's happening there. What is that talent pool like? Who could we possibly even have a legitimate shot at? When you're Kentucky, you pretty much have a shot at everybody. But you need to go ahead and get that feel. So when that 24 type class comes around, we know, hey, we're only going to take 2 or 3 guys in this class at best. If we miss, screw it. We're moving on to the transfer portal because we know that's where the biggest bang for our buck is going to be coming from. So it's really roster management, but you're calculating it years and years in advance, or not years and years, but at least 2 years in advance. You know what you're going to be coming up on.
So it's pretty clear that if there is going to be a pretty substantial home run hit for John Calipari in this 24 class, is going to be Jaden Quaintance. From a potential standpoint, from a college dominance standpoint, I feel like he's the only guy that you could immediately put in from day one and say, okay, that guy can be a star at the collegiate level. How important is it to land Jaden Quaintance, and what backstory do you know on his recruitment, and could John Calipari land him?
Kentucky can definitely land him. I think that's going to be a 2-man race, or maybe I should say 3-man race. Kentucky, Missouri, and you're going to probably have to fight off the G League Ignite. From an importance perspective, he's important. I wouldn't say he's the end-all be-all for this class, just because he's only 16 years old. So when he steps on campus, he's going to be 17. That's so young. Last time we had that was Devin Booker, and obviously Devin turned out extremely well.
How'd that work out?
He turned out extremely well. But he was also of age to kind of be a one and done. Whatever, doesn't matter. He was a little older than what Jane would be coming into college. Jane has a lot of maturing to do on the court. If you watched him a lot, I saw him probably 5-6 times this spring and summer. And I've spoken extensively about him with our team at 24/7 of out of those 5 times, 3, like you said, dominant. And there's very few people more physically gifted than him in all of high school basketball. I mean, he is an absolute specimen. But when you see those other 2 times, he's got a long way to go. Just a lot of maturing to do to become more consistent, productive, and ready for that collegiate jump. So again, I say that to basically say when he's a freshman in college, he might not be ready to be heavily relied on. And to come into a situation like Kentucky where you're going to be losing a lot, and a lot of people with his being highly ranked, there's going to be a lot of pressure on a 17-year-old kid who's going to be here for 2 years. That's a lot of adversity that you're going to have to handle and face. So I'll be very curious. Like, maybe my answer changes by the end of the season, and December, January rolls around after we're watching him at Overtime Elite, and that league that he'll be playing in, maybe we're like, no, this kid is an absolute priority. But as of right now, he's important, but I wouldn't say he's the end-all be-all.
And a lot of things, too, with this recruiting is how many guys are possibly coming back from the current roster. And this feels like a roster that has some guys that should, but we also know that you never depend on that, right?
Yeah.
Like in today's game.
To me, just having followed these kids for so long, Justin Edwards, he's gone. Kid will be a top 5 pick. DJ Wagner, he's gone. He may crack the lottery, in my opinion, but he's for sure gone. Rob Dillingham, I would probably count as gone. I wouldn't be surprised to see him come back, but as of entering college, I'd probably see him just going at the one-and-done route, whether he's projected as an early second-rounder and get an early promise or something, or maybe he cracks that first round. Reed Shepard coming back. Ugonna Kingsley, in my opinion, coming back unless we see him hit the transfer portal again. Aaron Bradshaw, gone. So that's 4 or 5 guys that you can count on being gone. Obviously, Antonio Reeves. So you can, to be honest, it's probably easier to gauge who's coming back in terms of it's going to be Reed Shepard, more than likely Ugonna Kingsley. Help me out here.
How do you view
I might be missing.
How do you view Aduthiero and his?
He'll be coming back.
Yeah.
Like he's one that he's going to stay in this program, in my opinion, and continue to develop on
And
this
is that
trajectory.
something that you've seen maybe from Cal? Like he added him late in the spring a year ago, then he goes and gets Jordan Burks, he gets Joey Hart. Is that encouraging maybe from a roster construction standpoint of the way the game is now, that you try to fill out maybe scholarship 10, 11, 12 with maybe some more longer term pieces that realistically should stick around?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate, especially at a program like Kentucky. Those 10, 11, 12 spots are very important. Those guys can really set a tone for how your culture is, how your locker room is, and you want guys in those positions that are going to go hard in practice, and they just love to put on that jersey and go out there and represent Kentucky night in and night out, because you want continuity. You want those 4-year guys there. When I was at Kentucky, we had that. E.J. Floreal, you can't speak highly enough. You had Derek Willis. Marcus Lee was there for a long time. You had a bunch of guys that really, Dominique Hawkins, can't say enough about that kid and what he meant to that program. So those guys are extremely valuable. They're happy putting on that jersey. They're going to go out there, work their tail off, and they provide a roster continuity that also kind of builds the team morale, the team chemistry over time. So those guys are always extremely important. So in terms of him adding those guys like Aduthiero, I see as being potentially very valuable to this program, especially come next season, especially with the way he's developed, his body, the way he defends. He can continue to get better on the offensive end of the floor. I think we saw that in Canada. He has continued to improve. But yeah, having those pieces there is definitely valuable.
So Cal has to add a couple high school guys, no matter how bad the 24 class is. You got to pick from that group. The group is what it is. And it's pretty clear that Billy Richmond is probably going to be one of those guys. Family history, Cal has been recruiting him from day one of the first high major offers that he received. Obviously, Memphis is going to be in the picture. He's coming off of an official visit to LSU. He has an absurd list. I don't think that he's even remotely considering that many schools, but it is what it is. It's the recruiting game. Would you consider Kentucky the favorite for Billy Richmond? And who else would you kind of put in the conversation there for watch Kentucky closely in that 24 class?
I would, and personally, Billy would be one of those that's the top of my board if I'm at Kentucky. The way that kid impacts both sides of the basketball, he's a John Calipari type player. He's a dog of a defender. He's going to get out in transition. He can pass and he can slash. The one area he's not good at is shooting the basketball. He's capable, but certainly got a long ways to go. But
a knuckleball, a little bit of a knuckleball. That's all right. It's all right.
The way he competes on both ends of the floor and how he impacts game at such a high level defensively, I absolutely love him. I have been a huge advocate of his since I first saw him last December when I went to watch DJ and Aaron in North Carolina, John Wall Invitational. And Billy honestly caught my eye more than either of them. So to me, Billy, yes, I would say Kentucky's in the driver's seat there. And one that I'm running that, he's atop my board. I want Billy Richmond all day.
If you're also considering potential reclass guys, where would Darren Peterson fit into that? Is he a guy that you would put atop Kentucky's board? Do you think that Kentucky has a significant shot? And should we be talking more of him as more of a 24 guy and somebody we should be kind of penciling in as a potential guy for John Calipari?
I mean, no question. He's an absolute no-brainer. When you talk about the best players in high school basketball, A.J. DeBansa, Cooper Flagg, Cameron Boozer, Darren Peterson. He's right there. So if you were to reclass, it would be an interesting move. It would be the exact same what Jane Quaintance is doing. He would have to play 2 years of college basketball, so that's something we're gonna have to be monitoring because he doesn't need another year of high school basketball. He absolutely dominates every time he steps on the floor. He's ready to make that leap to college. Physically, skill set, feel for the game, instincts, everything is ready. It's just a matter of, do you want to get to that, I guess. I was saying this the other day, we got to start transitioning our thoughts from get to the NBA sooner to just get to the NIL money sooner. And to me, he would be ready for that. So, yeah, certainly one that we can be talking about. Another one we should be talking about, too, Caleb Wilson. He's coming on an official visit. He is of age to make that reclass 06 birthday, just like Cooper Flagg. He can reclassify, be a one and done if he really wants to be. He has a ways to go developmentally to kind of make that jump. But to me, it wouldn't surprise me those 4 players I just said in terms of best high school basketball prospects, he's arguably number 4, number 5 on my personal board. I think that highly of Caleb Wilson. He's an extremely talented, skilled big man. Can stretch the floor, put the ball on the deck, great passer, block shots, just does absolutely everything at the power forward spot. So he's another one I'll have my eye on.
He's one of those guys that it's always been about motor, and it was the same gripes that I personally had about Brandon Miller watching him play, where it's like, gosh, he has every physical tool you could dream of in a basketball player, but it's just like sometimes you just got to kick him in the butt and say, come on, man, go. And then that was part of the reason why I was so low on Brandon Miller, and then he gets to college and we realize, well, he was just bored. Like all of it was just boards. He was out of boredom. So Caleb Wilson is another one of those guys for me where it's like, you know what, I'm going to stop caring as much about the motor stuff and just kind of trust those physical tools. Agreed. One of my personal favorites in the class. Where would Kentucky stand on his list, do you think? Because every time I've talked to him, it's been blue blood, blue blood, blue blood. He's brilliant as one of the best interviews I personally have had.
1,000%.
Where does Kentucky have a shot?
I mean, he's smarter than me already, and he's only 16, 17 years old. But, I think that one's probably too soon to tell. He's only just starting to set up his visits and really dig into this recruiting process. He's got a lot of blue bloods in pursuit, so too soon to tell. But going back to our conversation earlier in terms of how do you peg this 24 board and how would you kind of strategize this, now with Caleb Wilson, Darren Peterson, these guys started classifying, now that grows. I'm not and maybe some of the other recruits on your 24 board, maybe they slide down the list, and now you're going to prioritize those type of guys, if that makes sense.
And one thing you mentioned earlier, too, you were talking about the way Kentucky played at Global Jam and the style of play. How much do you think that plays into what they do in recruiting moving forward, too? That this 23 class collection talent wasn't great, but the way it fits together at Kentucky, it just makes a ton of sense from what we've seen. Do you think that style of play maybe plays into what Cal does moving forward a little bit more?
I think it's probably too soon to answer that because is this new style play going to stick? We've seen, or maybe just a global jam thing, because when you get into games against the SEC or playing Kansas or playing Gonzaga, and these games are extremely tightly contested battles. What does he revert to? Is he going to stick with the new stuff, or is he going to go back to what he knows? And so, to be honest, it's going to be a feel it out thing with this 24 class. I would envision it probably just same strategy and what you've always gone for, and then 25 maybe it starts to change and you adjust a little bit.
I will say on that note, hearing some more backstory on the Flory Badunga recruitment and what happened with Kentucky there, maybe it's just kind of a spin after the fact of, they lost on a guy, and the spin is, well, we didn't really want him. We kind of knew that Jaden Quaintance was reclassing, and that's kind of a better fit. But there were fit conversations after the fact that Flory Badunga is Oscar Tshiebwe, kind of, maybe a better version of, it's hard to say a better version of Oscar Tshiebwe, but kind of what Oscar does well. There's a chance that Flory could be even next level of that, but very one-dimensional in what he brings to the table. Whereas if you get a guy like Jaden Quaintance and he matures the way you hope that he does, that it would be a better fit in that, what we saw at Global Jam. Jaden would fit that a lot better than Flory Badunga, but that could also be spins up. But that's also just something that I heard after the fact. Travis, talk to me about some of the next guys in that 24 class. Some of the Boogie Flans coming off an official visit to Kentucky. Travis Perry, some of those Carter Knox even. Cal was there today at OTE today. What do you do with guys like that, where you like them but maybe not love them?
Yeah, you nailed it. Like, not love. I think, honestly, if they want them, they can probably get them. Boogie Flan was told his visit went absolutely great. I do believe Kentucky is the leader for that recruitment, going head-to-head probably with Indiana, who's the whole staff is flying in tonight. And this is Tuesday, September 12th, flying in tonight. Probably trying to flip that back. If they want them, I think they'll probably get them. Carter Knox, that one's been a fluid situation, been a tough one to keep a good gauge on where this thing is truly headed. Does Kentucky really want him? Are they going to make him a high priority, or are they going to let a school like maybe Louisville slide in and just, it is what it is? That's where I would say gauging the 25 recruits will be very valuable. is Caleb Wilson going to actually be tilting towards reclassifying? Is Darren Peterson going to be tilting towards reclassifying? And do we have a legitimate shot at him? Can we actually get him? And is that worth passing on these other guys? And to me, if you let, again, I would be, it's hard to say in the fall, but because you haven't seen the high school season, I would say track the high school season, and then you can make your decision a little bit more clear then if you would rather just wait for the portal or whatnot. And again, that goes back to my philosophy of I would personally probably keep it a small class. Take that what you will. I'd keep it a very small high school class at this moment and then hit the portal hard.
Let's talk a little bit about how much more time do we have with you? I don't want to.
No, you're good, brother.
Are we good? Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, we got plenty more to get to. I just didn't know how much we were able to make happen. 25 class. Everybody wants to know, does Kentucky have an actual, real, legit, not just spin zone, not just, they're doing this for optics. Can John Calipari land Cameron and Caden Boozer?
And just so you know, on the drive over here, I got 5 people asking me that exact question. I wanted to ask that.
They don't believe it. Nobody actually truly believes it. I've said Kentucky has a real shot.
What do you think?
I think Kentucky has a real shot. I think
Sean?
I think they do.
I'll be the deferring opinion. I don't think they do.
I will say I've heard good things that a visit is in the works, and this is one of the first officials we've heard for both of them. And I think it's because I've heard such good things about the way they've prioritized Caden, not just going all in on camp, but again, Duke will always be Duke. Carlos Boozer will always be Carlos
I'm
Boozer.
not saying it's a guarantee to Duke, though. I'm not saying that.
That's fascinating.
To me, this is going to be a race between Miami and Duke. Miami is home. They've done a phenomenal job recruiting them already. They follow them everywhere around the country. Obviously, families there, so there's a lot of proximity and comfort there. Kentucky, to me, no. Miami versus Duke is what the Boozer race will be.
I tried, guys. I'm sorry.
Sorry to burst the bubble,
I'm
but
sorry.
maybe I could be wrong, but I could be wrong.
So, what about some of those other 25s in that class? And I feel like we need to include AJ in that grouping.
Of course.
What about that? I personally believe UK is at the top of AJ's list. I think I would personally pencil him in as a guy that Cal obviously wants to go all in on. And talent-wise, for my money, I think he's the best in the world right now at what he does. What do you think of the rest of that 25 class, including AJ?
It's a special class at the top. AJ DeBansa, probably would be number one player in that class, pending his reclassification, which we are all assuming is going to happen. Would Kentucky have a shot? I'd probably think so. It's so early. Can't even contact the kids yet. They can contact you, but you can't contact them. But that one's going to be the North Carolina's Duke. Kentucky would probably assume UConn gets involved, being a Northeast kid right there in their backyard, and with the way they've kind of handled themselves winning the national championship and what they've done on the recruiting trail this past season, how they took that success on the court and taken it off the court, I would expect them to be a factor as well. So too soon to tell, but I would fully anticipate Kentucky's going to go all in trying to get AJ advanced.
Terrence Clark connections,
of course,
there are a lot of ties there. It would make so much sense for John Calipari to just push everything in on that kid because he's generational talent, one of the best I've personally seen with my own two eyes. Who else is Kentucky going to be strongly in the running for? Let's say Caleb Wilson reclasses to 24. What about everybody else? Malik Thomas, some of those guys. Who do you think Kentucky's going to be right there in the running for 25?
I would assume that they're going to be in the running for Malik Thomas. Would also bring in Darius Acuff on campus here soon. I believe that's coming up. Darius Acuff, really dynamic point guard, can fill it up at all three levels. Doesn't like to defend.
Big Blue Madness, October 14th.
That's what, honestly, but doesn't defend, but he can really play. Malik Thomas, absolute bucket getter. Trying to go through my head on the top players in that 25 class. I already told you about the Boozers.
There's so much movement, man. It's so early.
Kentucky historically hasn't been early recruiters. Cal doesn't like to offer kids early. They don't really put all their chips in early. They kind of just wait and see and really hit it hard once the spring and summer roll around and they're out on the recruiting trail at the EYBL or Adidas events every single weekend. So it's hard to gauge Kentucky this early unless they were to have a big change in recruiting strategy this year.
What about Tyron Stokes? What are the chances? I've personally heard that it could be some academic hurdles to potentially make that jump, but physically, I think he's obviously going to be in a position.
He could play college basketball tomorrow.
Right now, but do you think he's a reclass guy? And where would Kentucky, obviously with the proximity reasons, I think Kentucky would have a real shot there.
In the era of NIL, again, trying to change your philosophy, it would make a lot of sense for him to classify. He's physically everything. He's ready to make that jump again. It's going to come down to academics. Me personally, I'd probably bet he would be able to get in. And then Kentucky, I would assume, is going to be running Louisville native. Would be curious, does he actually want to come back home? That's going to be a question. But, yeah, Kentucky's definitely – they were, I believe, out there yesterday, Monday, to go see it. I believe it was them to see it.
I know
it was Louisville. I'm sorry.
Louisville,
wow, dang.
I know
Louisville was out there
Kentucky's
seeing
on the
yesterday,
docket.
not Kentucky. Yes.
I know Kentucky's on the docket. I just don't know if it was Monday.
It was not Monday. They were not there yesterday. Sorry, get a lot of
For all the
things
people that say
coming across my
Louisville's not
table,
doing their job,
but yeah.
people saying Louisville's not doing their job, they made the trip.
If I'm Kentucky, he's definitely at the top of my board in that 26 class. Him and AJ are clearly the 1-2 guys, and then it's going to be a fill-it-out process for the rest of that class. To me, the next top player in 2026 is Brandon McCoy. He's a point guard out in Los Angeles. Big-time player, but if you're Kentucky, do you really need to dive in on him as a 2026 kid this early? So it's going to be wait and see. But Tyron, AJ, those are no-brainers. You go ahead and get on them now, especially with him being from Louisville, and just ride it out.
How good do you think those two in particular can be together, and how much are you as a evaluator watching that prolific team this year to see how they kind of mesh?
The prolific team is going to be hard because they have so many players. It's not just you have AJ and Tyron. No, you got Zoom Diallo and like 7 other top 40 kids on that team. They're absolutely stacked. So it's going to be how do they all mesh? To me, if you were to put AJ and Tyron together, I think that's an awesome 1-2 punch at the 3-4. Obviously, they don't like hearing that, but I mean, AJ can play the 3, Tyron can play the 4, but they're both honestly kind of positionless. AJ can really pass. He's got to work on his decision making a little bit, but in time with how he sees and feels the game and his instincts and his skill set, it would not surprise me in time to see him be like, I'm comfortable putting the ball in his hands in a pinch if I need to, and letting him go. And you'd have an extremely versatile, talented kind of duo there. One can score from all 3 levels. Tyron got to keep improving that long-range jumper, but he's also a really good passer. I think that's something that goes a bit underappreciated with him is for a 15-year-old, the way he sees the floor and gets other people involved off the live dribble, it's extremely impressive. Both guys would be ready to
especially
play.
Especially I mean, he's a walking bowling ball. Like,
Yes.
Physically, he's just not fair. And then just to be as gifted as he does with all the other stuff, that he doesn't need to be a great passer, but he just is because he's really damn good. That's that would be, for my money, the 2 guys that if I was in John Calipari's office, I'd say, do whatever it takes to get those 2 together, be at every prolific game this year, get those 2 together in that 25 class, and just let everything else play out the way it
I'll also
needs to.
say this, especially if they continue to play the way they played in Canada, I want versatility. That's me. I love versatility. I would go all in on those guys, and they would be able to – you'd have 4 out, 1 in, and just play. Get up and down the court. Nobody – that's why I say they'd be the 3-4, but if you play that style, you're not a 3 or a 4. You're just on the perimeter and you're just playing basketball. It doesn't matter at that point, and that's what I would be all in. I think if you have those 2 on the court, you're going to be a hell of a team defensively, and honestly, people are going to have a hard time keeping those guys in front, and you just get out and run people to death.
Who is an under-the-radar kid that Kentucky might not be in on yet, but you think they should be? Any class, 24, 25, or 26. Assuming 24 is too late, but
Honestly, they've kind of already hit it, and that's Patrick Gongba. I've been so high on Pat going back to late May when I got to see Team Takeover down in Memphis. He dominated that weekend, absolutely dominated. And at the time, he was ranked 90. And after I saw him, I was like, guys, this kid's a player. He's a 5-star talent. We currently got him ranked 30th in the country, but that's going to be changing extraordinarily soon. Stay tuned to 24/7 Sports for that. Going to plug that. But yeah, to me, he was the guy in terms of he's that under the radar player that's gone underappreciated for a long time. And honestly, he was right there in front of us playing with PVI. Playing with Team Takeover. We've seen him every single weekend probably, and the way he's developed. I believe they're getting him on a visit here soon as well.
September 29th.
Okay. And the way he impacts the game, if you look at his stat sheet, it's not the most impressive of things. Averages 10 points a game, 5-6 rebounds. But the team he played on, the way he plays basketball, he's an extremely good passer for a big man. He put the ball in his hands, he can push the floor, makes great decisions with the basketball. He's also stretching the floor out to 3. So that's the skill type of big man that he would fit into the Trey Mitchell potential role at the end of the day. So under the radar guy, they've already hit it, and that is Patrick Gongba.
So Pat or Jaden Quaintance?
Whew, man.
Assuming you have a real shot at both. And I think Kentucky does.
I do think it's a real shot at both. Pat
Or do you
Gongba,
take both?
the Gongba sweepstakes is going to be Kentucky versus Duke, in my opinion. Duke's PVI connections are very deep. You have Jeremy Roach on roster now. You have Trevor Keels, and you have Darren Harris coming in next year in 2024 for Duke. So they've had success and a long-standing history with that program. So do you take both? That one, you'd be hard-pressed to play them both together, in my opinion. I think you had to play them both at the 5. It's where they're both going to be best at. Who do you take? Man, that's a really tough question. I would say probably have to take Quaintance. More talent. It's going to be there for 2 years. If he hits, he's going to hit so big.
It's like DeMarcus Cousins level hit.
If you end up passing on that and he goes to Missouri, it just torches you 2 times in a season, potentially 3 if you play him in the SEC tournament. That would be really bad. And I think Patrick Gongba is going to be really, really good. I think it's going to impact winning at the collegiate level, at a high level. But if you have to take one or two, you probably got to go with Queens.
A couple more before we get you out of here. Didn't get to ask you about the local kid, Jasper Johnson. What do you think about him? He also has a reclass decision to make, age-wise, able to make the jump. Academically, he is. But the question is physically. He's thin, wiry guard, kind of that D-Lo mindset and approach to the game. But there's something to be said about him being a $160.
Yeah. From a play perspective this season, I couldn't have been more impressed with Jasper. I was a little concerned. Maybe not concerned is the word. I was very interested into how he was going to play on the EYBL circuit, playing up on Team Thad for the 17s. And honestly, couldn't have been a better fit with the way Team Thad plays and the way he competed on both ends of the floor all season long for that team. His improvement in his jump shot, his Peach Jam numbers didn't back it up, but he shot the ball a lot better during the regular season. From a physical perspective, yes, he has to get in shape. And it's not just get stronger. He actually has to get in shape. We actually had somebody out at Link yesterday watching him, and that was the one takeaway is Jasper has to get in shape. And so the way he played, impressive. Kentucky should definitely be on him. Again, one of those Kentucky-type players. Kentucky, homegrown players that if he's a 2-year guy, that's awesome. You need that continuity. He's got enough upside to tap into, and he's already a good enough player. Personally, I don't know if he's going to do the reclass thing. As of right now, it sounds like he's probably more going to stick in 2025.
Every conversation I've had has been, 25.
Yeah, and so
the buzz is what it is.
We'll see by the end of the season. He's playing for Link Academy this year. Another stacked team, talking about prolific prep. Link Academy's right there with him, and Montbirds, all those guys. Going to be playing with a lot of different players out there, a lot of talent out on that team, on that roster. So how does he fit? How does he perform with those guys? And maybe it just comes at maybe he outperforms like we saw him do this spring and summer. He's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm ready to make that move to 2024, but maybe he's like, you know what, I need another year before doing that.
You're doing my job for me, talking about the talent at Link. We did not get to address Trey Johnson, who Kentucky is a finalist for. You haven't heard a lot of buzz about Kentucky in its chances as of late. Something to that, nothing to that. Will they get a follow-up official in the next month or two?
I mean, maybe they do, but I don't really think that they're much of a contender at this point. I think that ship sailed when KT Turner took that job at UT Arlington. Don't really have any deep ties to Texas like that. So that one seems to be Baylor, Texas, and G League Ignite.
Well, this has been fun, man. I appreciate you coming on. We do have some bills to pay, and I just we got to hit those first.
Come on, I'll be taking notes.
Source Say Podcast is brought to you by Andy Luedecke and MyPerfectFranchise.net. Andy is a franchise consultant as well as franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he is here to help. If you have any questions about business ownership, you can learn more and contact Andy anytime at www.myperfectfranchise.net. And Shawn, our personal favorite, we're rocking it right now. Bird Dogs, they make you look good. Their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. I know you like some sculpted looks.
We should have brought him a Bird Dogs.
I know. What do I got to do to get one of these sponsorships? I've been repping like all these other different brands. I won't mention who in respect to Bird Dogs, but man, you guys are rocking out.
Well,
and sculpted, you look great, by the way. Great shape, working, man.
I appreciate that. Speaking of, maybe who some of those competitors might be that you could be a fan of potentially, Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. They fix this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. And they use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric, tongue twister, and also awesome fabric, by the way, that keeps you cool and dry all day long. As you can see, we're wearing them. I wore my Bird Dogs pants to play golf this past weekend. Comfortable, cool, just the absolute best. Go to birddogs.com/KSR or enter promo code KSR for a free Bird Dogs Hydro Flask style water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/KSR or promo code KSR for a Bird Dogs Hydro Flask style water bottle. You don't want to take your Bird Dogs off, as I am not, we promise you. And then finally, last but not least, certainly not least, our guys at Gametime. They are the absolute best in the ticketing world. Talk about an app that you can use that is as convenient and efficient and user-friendly as imaginable.
Yeah, straight to the point. You're in and out in 5 minutes. I mean, you got your deals there. You can see your view from your seats. I've used Gametime. Actually, used Gametime again. I bought tickets to again Cincinnati Reds, pushing for the playoffs. Hopefully, they play the Minnesota Twins. Definitely.
Did you use the quick deal? Did you
yes,
get to use
slide at the top and it pulls up?
How easy is it to use that?
You swipe and you got your seats. They're right there. I mean, it's the instant electric right there. Boom.
How much do you love the ability to see the seats from where you are, and how much does that impact your ticketing purchases?
Significantly, because I can pan the camera around, and if I want to see my neighbors to the left or my neighbors to the right, you can see exactly what it looks like if you're inside the stadium.
You shouldn't have to worry when you are buying tickets. Now isn't the time for guesswork. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the best price guarantee, Gametime does all of the hard work for you. They have deals on tickets right up until the start of the event. Even an hour after it starts, it is the place to find last-minute deals, find exclusive flash deals, and sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With Zone Deals, you pick the section, and Gametime picks the seats for an average of 18% savings, and the Gametime guarantee means you will always get the best price if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference, Travis.
I'm going to tell you, I hadn't heard of Gametime until you guys just did this little thing. I'm sold.
What else? I mean, what else do you need to know other than taking the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code KSR for $20 off your first purchase, so it fits perfectly for you because you didn't know this existed before that, which is a shame because it means you didn't listen to some of our previous shows. Caught you red-handed, buddy. You better get on it. Specifically for this, create an account, redeem code KSR for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Travis Branham, was a blast, man. Appreciate
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys having me on, man.
it. Well, where can fans find your work before we can chat here?
You can find me over at 247sports.com. Also, Twitter, Travis Branham _. Also, sorry, not Twitter, X, Travis Branham _. And then Instagram, Travis Branham 24/7.
Shawn, same with you.
You can follow me on X at GBB Country.
Find me on Twitter as well, at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Reach out to me via email, jpilgrim@KentuckySportsRadio.com. With that, we'll be back next time for another jam-packed Source to Say podcast. We will see you then.